Day 244 of the Trump administration, and tonight we have new stories and new headlines that reveal a lot about where the Mueller investigation is right now, how extensive it is, how lasting an effort it is. The latest news tonight comes from the Washington Post and zeroes in on Paul Manafort, specifically his communications during the campaign before Trump became the Republican nominee. It says Manafort, quote, offered to provide briefings on the race to a Russian billionaire closely aligned with the Kremlin, according to people familiar with the discussions. Manafort wrote in the July 7th, 2016 email, quote, if he needs private briefings, we can accommodate. That July 7th email came at a busy time for the campaign. Manafort wrote it less than a month after he sat in on that June meeting at Trump Tower with Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and a group of Russians. 2 weeks later, Trump accepts the Republican nomination for president. It happened the same day Trump campaign advisor Carter Page delivered a speech in Moscow criticizing U.S. policy. That brings us to today's other big news about Special Counsel Mueller, first reported by the New York Times under the headline, Mueller seeks White House documents related to Trump's actions as president. The Times and the Washington Post both report Mueller wants documents in 13 different areas, all separate categories. They include former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's departure from the White House, his interview with the FBI and his conversations with the Russian ambassador, and the warning the Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates gave the White House about Flynn. Mueller also wants all material relating to Paul Manafort. He wants records related to that Trump Tower meeting set up by Don Jr. Then there's the firing of FBI Director, Jim Comey. Mueller wants all documents related to meetings between Trump and Comey, and records of any discussions about Comey's firing, and records about the statement Sean Spicer made the night Comey was fired. He also wants information on that Oval Office meeting with the two Russians the next day, the one where Trump reportedly called Comey a nut job in front of the visitors and said firing him had relieved great pressure on him. Perhaps the most sobering note in all of today's coverage is this quote in the Washington Post from a government official about the power and staying power of Mueller's sweeping effort. Quote, I am convinced that no matter where they end up, this investigation will run to completion even if they fire Mueller. There is a feeling of inevitability now that we didn't have before. Not of the outcome of the investigation, but that there will be an outcome. There is no escaping this thing, whatever the conclusions. Let's bring in our leadoff panel tonight. Ashley Parker, White House reporter for The Washington Post. Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for The New York Times, MSNBC political analyst both. And Mika Owyang, an attorney, former defense advisor to Senator Ted Kennedy, former staffer to the House Intelligence Committee and Armed Services Committee as well. Welcome to you all. Peter, we welcome you to our New York studios. How does this explain, flesh out the work of Mueller? We've all been, you less than others, we've all been looking at him from afar.
Right. I think it shows that he's casting a broad net, and he's examining the kinds of things that have been in the news now for the several months, and he's looking at the most controversial elements of the Trump presidency. The firing of Jim Comey, the firing of Michael Flynn. These are big, big moments. The one that struck me the most, though, asking for the records involving the meeting with Sergei Kislyak, the foreign minister of Russia, and his ambassador. That is a big, big deal, because we're not just then asking about political issues or political conversations inside the White House. We're talking about foreign policy, national security, traditionally the most sensitive and most protected confidential communications of any president. That's a big deal. Because
you do know and have known more about the Mueller effort than most of us. This also explains what we've seen in the hiring that's been going on and the teams he set up, which would be a first-class Washington law firm were it a standalone firm, correct?
No, that's absolutely right. So Robert Mueller has 17 prosecutors now working for him, 17. And when you talk to the lawyers in the Trump circle, they are very struck by that. That says to them, this is a serious effort. We're not going to get out of this easily because, in fact, you don't hire 17 prosecutors if you don't plan to have a prosecution. Now, we don't know what the outcome is, as the quote you just used from the Washington Post showed, but it does start to feel like this is going to head somewhere. Where? How fast? We don't know. But it's not going away.
Mika Owyang, these lawyers are the kinds of public servants who move in and out of the public sphere and private practice, as Mueller has over the years, but they are public servants. So hearing all that about this team Mueller has put together, seeing these 13 categories of inquiry, if you were White House counsel or if you were Trump's personal counsel, what would your defense be?
I'd be very nervous in all of this. And I think that what you saw with the Corey Lewandowski statement earlier today is you could see an attempt to say these people, Manafort and Flynn, are bad apples and acting on their own, that they wasn't authorized and this doesn't have to do with me. But with this document request from Mueller on these 13 categories, now we're talking about actions by the President of the United States. So it'll be very difficult for them to say it was just other people during the campaign. This is now about the president's actions as the president of the United States.
Ashley, the relentlessness of this inquiry, and now learning as much as we've learned about the broad-based nature of it, what must this be doing to the psyche of Donald Trump and the circle of people around him?
Well, it's not great for morale within the West Wing on two levels. First of all, even some of the mid-level staffers, low-level staffers who say, probably correctly, they in theory have nothing to worry about, it occupies just a tremendous amount of headspace because their concern is now if they're going to have to hire a lawyer, if they accidentally walked in on a conversation and it means that they're going to have to speak to Mueller and his investigators at some point. So it's an added stress for people who in theory working in the White House should sort of be a wonderful, stressful, exhausting, but exhilarating experience. And it's sort of a blemish, to put it mildly. And then for the president himself, Russia is an issue that consumes him. It's sort of always in the backdrop simmering. It consumes him to varying degrees. And so when these stories come out, and these stories are reflecting actual actions in progress in the investigation, it's the sort of thing that we see, this White House right now is being more disciplined, actually. They felt like they had a good experience at the UN. General Kelly's brought some streamlining there. But this is the sort of thing that makes the president send out a tweet or make an inopportune statement or a poor decision that could then give Mueller more fodder and something else to look into.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.